What if I told you that I wanted your body right now, and the Sega Genesis had one of the greatest RPGs of all time? Would you hold it against me? That's right, the Sega Genesis, a system that isn't really known for RPGs or even good RPGs. I mean, I can probably count all the good RPGs on the Sega Genesis on one hand. It has one of the greatest RPGs of all time. Not just a good RPG, like in the top 5 or 10 best RPGs of all time. Like Phantasy Star is right up there with Final Fantasy VI and Dragon Quest VIII. It is really that good. The game has everything for a fantastic RPG. Marvelous and wondrous environments and world, a fantastic score that accompanies you all throughout the gameplay and really fits with what's going on. Whether you're walking through some kind of dark, damp caverns, a happy little town, or fighting some kind of boss monster. The game is long, involving, it has fascinating characters that you actually start caring about. Because at the end of the day, an RPG has to be one part game and one part a really involving novel that sucks you into the story and the world of the actual game. The characters also get switched around, like you don't always have the same characters in your party. This keeps the game fresh because all the characters have their own little special magic spells or different abilities. Like some characters you get in your party can teleport you out of dungeons, some characters can heal you, some characters can actually teleport you to different parts of the world, like a town that's all the way on the other side of the world map, and those characters are fantastic to have in your party because it saves you a lot of needless walking, especially through areas where you don't really gain too many levels just because the enemies are a little too weak for you and it's just a waste of your time to fight them. Oh, and the combat in this game, spectacular. I mean, one of the problems RPGs have, even good RPGs, is the combat can get boring. I mean, turn-based RPGs fall into this trap. The strategy all becomes the same. One character chooses attack, the other character chooses whatever powerful spell or ability they're good at, and you just rinse and repeat that for like 90% of the enemies. Most of the time, you have a lot of characters in your party that you have to use in combat. You can macro commands for some of the weaker enemies and mobs, but for tougher enemies and especially bosses, you have to think on your feet. You have to fight live by yourself without any kind of preordained macro system. It takes some serious skill not to have at least one of those characters die if you're fighting any kind of monsters that are worth their weight in salt. Sometimes when the character's too hurt, you choose defend. Instead of attacking, that character defends so he doesn't die in the next turn. Sometimes you have to use attacks that really hit one character super hard, or sometimes you have to use kind of AoE attacks like the boomerang attacks of the main heroine. These kind of hurt all the enemies on the screen, but just a little bit. You have to mix it up depending on what kind of enemies you're fighting, how many enemies there are, what kind of different combinations of enemies there are, what magics and skills you have at your disposal, and what magic and skills the enemies have at their disposal. I mean, some of the tougher fights in this game are absolute chess games, and I love that. I want thinking in the game, not crazy, impossible difficulty where it all comes down to chance whether you make it or not, but a game where your superior intellect wins the day. I respect that kind of gameplay. There's so many different spells and abilities, and combined with the fact with just how many different characters there are, you will basically never get bored of the combat in this game in your first playthrough. The only time I can even fathom getting bored is when you have to grind. Like sometimes you have to get through like a dungeon that's way too hard. You have to get to like the 3rd floor of a dungeon to get some kind of, say, herb to heal some guy in like a town on the other side of the world. And the monsters between you and the medicine you have to get are way too hard. So you have to keep fighting them, and then when you get hurt a little too much, you teleport or run back to town, heal yourself up, and do this over and over until the monsters are actually manageable. There is some of this type of grinding in this game, and you would expect that from an RPG, especially an old school RPG. I mean, retro games are supposed to be challenging, and I would argue good RPGs are supposed to be challenging. If you feel like a role-playing game and you're just not sure what to play because you've basically sucked Skyrim and Ni no Kuni and whatever other newer RPGs are out there completely dry and have nothing else to do there, try out this retro classic. I am telling you, if you're an RPG fan, you will absolutely fall in love. Phantasy Star 4 The End of the Millennium gets an official stanburdman rating of a 9.3 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Goodbye, my friends.